Oh, so yeah, and if you hear a little jingling today, that's little Aaron. We're trying to let him in. Now, I can hear the candle. Can you hear it?
I can actually. I don't know.
I should probably go blow it out, huh? Yeah, okay.
Pretty crackling.
Yeah, it's got a wood tip. It's one of them candles with the wood thingy. What do you call that again? The wick. It's a wood wick.
John Wick. Wood wick.
Yes. And it's black cedar, so it didn't quite smell like cedar that I'm used to, but it still makes the room smell a little nice. And I'm trying to get through all of my candles and hopefully not have to use them anymore. But they do cover up, it's not that we're dirty, but we have 3 cats.
Yeah.
And it gets into the carpet. It's not the litter box smell. It's just the general cat smell.
Cat.
Yeah.
I have that smell. I have wood floors and I have that smell. It's
yeah, wood floors help. And we're saving right now for upstairs to pull that carpet up because the wood floor is still there, but we don't have the expertise to fix it. So we're saving to get that done, and then hopefully that'll take care of it because down here doesn't really smell down here in the basement, but you can smell the cat smell upstairs for sure. And once the weather is a little nicer, I'll crank the windows open as best as I can because my one cat, little Irene, with the jingly bell,
likes to get out.
she climbs up the window and then she hangs on at the top, and the weight pulls the screen out of the window.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So that's why when I go out, my windows are always closed because I don't want to come home and find out my cat's escaped.
Yeah.
But in 1865, you didn't have to worry about that.
Well, about cats or screens?
Both.
Okay.
Both.
There's no cats around yet.
Yeah.
When did cats become a thing in America, I wonder? Maybe that should be a good study.
Yeah.
The first cat in Nebraska.
Yeah, because I don't know if anyone actually owned cats in the past. Like if you go to Istanbul, the city is famous for their wild cat population, but they're also tame. They've done catch and release on them, but there is a sizable cat population there, and everybody just feeds them and pets them and stuff, and they kind of belong to the city, but no one actually owns any of them. Yeah. And whenever you hear about cats in ancient Egypt, it's the same thing. They were revered, but I've never read any accounts of someone owning them. Like, this is my little pet cat.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
Really know how
when did we start bringing them indoors?
Right. That's a good question.
Yeah. So anyway, we've been gone for a while. I know I told you, but I had put a little addendum on the last episode that it might be a little bit before we got back to doing it. So
we're back. We're back, folks.
We're
like
back.
It or not.
Yeah, whether you like us or
a bit more.
As I was reading, so today we're going to talk about Mud Springs and the Battle of Mud Springs. And I didn't really know much about it. Every time I drive to Sydney, I head down 385, and the sign for Mud Springs is just north of Dalton. And so I see the sign all the time. And like we were talking last time, the signs are decent, but they are limited to how much info you can put on it.
Yep, they are.
So there's always, you're like, more. Where can I find more information? And there's a ton of information about Mud Springs that I didn't realize. I did notice when I was back in New York for my mom's funeral, their markers are extremely small. I knew they were smaller than what we get out here. We get the good, they're like 5 feet tall.
See, and I'm surprised. I would have thought New York, with all that history, would have had huge markers for everything.
No, they're small markers. There's 3 sentences max on a marker. They're everywhere, though. At least
there's a lot of history.
Yeah, and I noticed this time. So here in Nebraska, the markers stick out because they're so big. in New York, they're everywhere. Maybe that's why they're smaller, but they're everywhere. And like in my hometown of Middletown, there was a store called Lloyd's Supercenter. Can't remember what Mr. Lloyd's first name was. I went to school with his grandson, who was a jerk because, yeah, I'm rich. And I'm like, you're not rich, your granddad's rich, even when we were in elementary school. And I think it was Joe Lloyd. I think that was Mr. Lloyd's first name. But anyway, he had the first supermarket in the U.S.
Oh, okay.
Was in my and he offered. He's kind of like Walmart. You have the grocery part and the department store part. And there was also a store in my hometown called Playtogs. They were for where all of us poor people went and shopped, and they were the first store in the nation to break the blue laws. And essentially, you'd get fined, let's say, $2,000 for being open on Sunday.
Oh, okay.
They made $5,000. So they're like, whatever, dude, we still got a $3,000 profit. And they did it often enough that another store followed, and then another, and then they just quit fining places. So technically, I think those laws are still on the books in New York, and technically that would be free money for the state to continue fining them, saying, hey, this is against the law, but...
Open on Sunday, that's it.
Yeah.
That'd be no problem here, though. If they start enforcing that, everybody would be like, fine, most of us are closed on Sunday, and screw you guys.
Yeah.
This place would be a ghost town on Sunday.
Yes.
You wouldn't be able to do it's Christmas every Sunday. You can't go to the restaurants, can't go to the gas stations, you can't do nothing.
Nothing's
open. Every Sunday will be Christmas, guys.
Including the emergency room.
Yep.
Did your mom give you that when you were little, too? You can't get hurt because emergencies room is closed today.
No, because my dad usually had to work on Christmas Eve, so I knew better. One of them actually usually had to work on Christmas Eve, if not be on call. So I knew better.
Okay.
I knew they always had to have a job. Yeah.
So my mom used that excuse on us until I figured out, Mom, you work in a home with developmentally disabled folks. Your days off are Monday, Tuesday. So what? It
doesn't make sense.
And then she's like, yeah, but I work over there at the psych center. That's over there at the hospital. And I believed it for a little while, and then eventually my brain was like, yeah, no, they're there. If you get hurt, they're there. They'll help you. It was,
well, and my parents weren't really ever into the Christmas mythos too much of it. I mean, if it was all for fun. Like, I don't think they ever really preached that Santa was ever real, except in jest. I mean, it was just, you knew it was for fun. I think at a very young age, you still knew it was for fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I ever truly believed in Santa, but I would get, on Christmas Day, my dog's name was Conan. Mm-hmm. And I would get Christmas gifts from Conan, and my mom would insist that Conan had wrapped that. I'm like, he's a dog. He did not wrap that gift. You did it. But she would do that my whole life. Like, Conan would give me stuff, and then as I got older, I still would get stuff from Santa, but if I liked, let's say, Harrison Ford, I might get a gift from Harrison. I'd be like, really, Mom? Really? But it was all in fun. It was just so that it didn't look like she gave me too many things for Christmas,
my parents weren't, my family weren't like that. It's like, no, this is from Mom. This is from Dad. This is from Grandma. There was no, this is from Santa. No, it was like, no, you knew exactly who to hug.
Yeah.
And how many hugs each people fought over. Yeah. So it's like, no. There's a big contest, I think, in Christmas. It's like, who got the most love?
and mine also were always written by her, and she'd be like, oh, no, Conan wrapped the present. I just filled out the tag for him. No, you didn't, Mom. He's a dog. He can't wrap gifts. And if he could, we'd have a lot more money than what we currently have.
Well, my Christmases were ridiculous as I was a kid. I had those memorable, Kodiak picture 90s kids Christmases where you had this presents stacked up so you can barely see the tree. That was my grandma's every Christmas Eve. And we always opened hers at Christmas Eve. And then even at my house, we had it pretty high. I was never a kid that suffered from not having Christmas presents at all. I was giving so many Christmas presents I couldn't even believe it. And it was always so much fun to uncover the tree from all the Christmas
From all the presents.
And of course, they weren't all just for me or my sisters. I mean, by then I had cousins and I had
right.
my mom and dad.
And everybody's stuff
goes... And uncle. And everybody's stuff went that year. Right. So, I mean, it was never just for you, but it was still exciting to see everybody getting those gifts. So, yeah, right. It was very, very fun.
Nice. Yeah, my mom worked 3:30 to midnight. So when we got up in the morning, we were allowed to open one gift because she usually worked Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, unless they happened to fall on her Monday, Tuesday off. And even then, she sometimes volunteered because where she worked, you got double time for holidays. Yeah. So, as a little kid, it sucks, but as an adult, you're like, oh yeah, I'd do it too. Double time? Yeah, you betcha.
Yeah, when I don't remember, I think the first at least 5 or 7 years of me coming out of the chef at a culinary school, I didn't have a Christmas.
Yeah.
No.
When I worked at the Star Herald, Christmas was one of my holidays I had to work, and I didn't care.
You always work Christmas. That was just, especially since I worked at resorts, what were they going to do?
Yeah, exactly. And because we were only allowed to open one, I got really good as a kid. Shaking, nope, that's socks. Nope, that's not anything good. Oh, that might be actually what I wanted for Christmas. So I got real good at guessing what was inside the packaging. Because
I got really good too. I got good at the VHSs because that's what I always wanted. I always wanted the movie before Christmas Eve. So I was trying to think like what's new movies that were coming out that I long forgot because, back then you only have the commercials for a limited time, and then you forgot. You were such and such an age, and you don't remember what came out. But, I mean, we would get, like, Aladdin and The Lion King and stuff like that, all that for Christmas. And we would never know what the VHSs is. They were truly kind of a mystery because we just wouldn't remember.
Yeah. You're like, yeah,
we just wouldn't remember.
You're like, it's a movie, don't know what it is.
But that's what I was most excited about because, movies, at least back then, because we didn't have cable. So
we didn't either.
That's what you lived off of was movies,
Yeah, I had friends in school, oh, how come you don't have cable? I'm like, really? My mom's a single mom, and you got two parents working.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say we don't have cable. For a while, we had basic cable, and then we got cable, but even then, when I was really young, it was just basic cable, like the 13, 15 channels.
Yeah, we just had the basic PBS, over-the-air, yeah.
You got Wishbone and Arthur and the Magic School Bus, and I mean, when I was younger, Barney and Sesame Street. Had all those,
Yeah.
Barney came back.
Really?
Didn't you see that at Walmart?
No.
Freaking terrifying.
No. I missed the whole Barney thing. My nephew was big into Barney. That's right. You
grew up with Barney.
He's 37 now. You're right around his age.
Oh yeah, Barney, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and Lamb Chop. Were the three big ones that I remember, and Sesame Street were the four big ones that I remember throughout my life. Yeah.
My mom liked Lamb Chop, but we didn't have...
Lamb Chop was cool. She was cool. I was so sad when she died. I really was. For a ventriloquist doing that kids show, I thought she was amazing.
Yeah. My mom loved her. I never really got into the PBS shows. I didn't really watch a lot of TV when I was little, so when I zeroed in on something, it was disappointing when I couldn't see it. The one thing when I was a little kid was Wonder Woman and Woody Woodpecker.
I remember Wonder Woman.
And we had to take turns. My aunt's 6 years older than me, and my sister's 2 years older than me, and we had to take turns after school. So if Monday was my aunt, Tuesday was my sister, Wednesday was me, and we had to take turns. So I didn't get to watch Woody Woodpecker every day after school. It sucked, man.
Damn it.
But I did get to watch Wonder Woman. We always made sure of that. And then...
I remember, I shouldn't say originals, of course, but reruns of the old Wonder Woman. It was back-to-back with the old Adam West shows.
Okay.
Batman.
Yeah. I remember when I was little, my mom goes, oh my God, Batman's so stupid. How can you stand watching it? And I thought it was cool. And then I go to college and there was some marathon of it on one time and I'm watching it and I'm just laying there going, wow, how did I think this was cool? And then I'm like, yeah, I was 10. Of course it was cool. I'm 20 now.
Just the one-liners even when I was young. Like, Holy Polaris Batman. Jesus Willikers Batman. It's just like, how many one-liners do you got, Robin?
You got to give props to the writers for, okay, what one can we do this week? Oh, but today's episode is long before TV was even a thing. Pretty much before radio, too. 1865, was radio around then? Maybe? Oh my God!
Basic, maybe.
Yeah. But not like we understand it.
Like public broadcasting radio. No, I don't believe so.
No.
I don't believe so. No.
Like maybe
could
some.
Be completely wrong. But I don't believe so. I mean, we're talking about like basic telegraphing, maybe.
Yeah, we had telegraphs then.
1865, though.
Because there's an interesting bit in here about the telegraph in the story.
But I don't know if it'd be much beyond that yet.
Yeah.
Radio.
There's, it's hard because we could technically pull out our phones and look that up, but I generally don't.
I'm lazy.
I just don't like to do that because then there's lots of dead air and I get sidetracked, and then 20 minutes later, like now, you're like, what the heck? So finally today on Storytelling on the Plains, we're going to talk about the Battle at Mud Springs, and your mom had said her friend, or was it you, should do an opening for us. So that
it wasn't me.
I think it was your mom. And I've met the gentleman, and the sad thing is I wrote a story about him. I can't remember his name right now, but she was like, you guys need to have a opening. Okay, all right, we'll get around to it one day. I go, when he's in town, because he's a trucker, and I guess he was in California.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. I know who you're talking
I go,
about.
That's okay. I'll write an opening script.
He'd be okay, yeah. He'd be good. I think he'd be good.
I was like, I could do that, and then you guys can just show up
She must
one
have
day
told
and-
you, because, I wouldn't have thought of this guy
Yeah.
now.
But we always forget here, but anybody that listens to us already knows that we ramble on before we finally get to the episode 17 minutes in.
You could just skip ahead.
Yeah, we'll skip ahead. And that's it for today. That was the Battle of Mud Springs.
Probably put a miss thing on the beginning. It's like, skip ahead if you don't want this.
Yeah, skip ahead to
meat.
18 minutes 17 and a half now if you don't want to hear us blathering on. But we've been gone for a couple of weeks, so we're just catching up and doing our own little thing. So it all began around 4 p.m. on Saturday, February 15th, 1865. Lieutenant Colonel William O. Collins, 11th Ohio Cavalry, commanding Eastern Subdistrict of Nebraska, was notified by telegram that Mud Springs, a telegraph station 105 miles east of Fort Laramie, had been attacked by Native Americans. So Collins is over in Fort Laramie. We don't have cars. It's, what is it, Fort Laramie? 45 minutes from here?
Don't ask me.
Oh, God, yes, because your mom will yell again because we get the distance wrong. Well,
it's in Goshen County, so yes, it's not too far.
Yeah. So 105 miles.
And the funny thing is I had been there as a kid. I know I've taken a few
But when you
there.
do stuff on the fly, you make mistakes.
But Fort Laramie, I think that's a more preserved fort, right?
Yeah.
It's almost all preserved. It's almost like Fort Robinson, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's a little better preserved.
It's a little better preserved. And it's all like white buildings.
Yeah, because though
I know.
Yeah, so even though there's a lot of buildings at Fort Rob, and I'm hoping maybe this summer we can get to the Fort Rob stories because it's going to be like a 10-part series. But there's quite a few buildings missing from Fort Rob.
Oh yeah.
Even though it looks like there's a ton of buildings, there's like half of them are gone.
Yeah.
So before we begin, I want to provide a little bit of geography so folks can locate the area. Mud Springs is located in south-central Morrill County, Nebraska, about 8 miles northwest of the present-day town of Dalton. In the June 1951 issue of Nebraska History, Paul Henderson wrote that Mud Springs gets its name from the springs at the mouth of the canyon between the Lodgepole Creek and North Platte River valleys. Travelers on the overland trails often found the springs muddy because bison had trampled through them. As with most archaeological sites in western Nebraska, there is also ample evidence of Native Americans occupying this area for several centuries. it's pretty well established anywhere in western Nebraska. Native Americans were here long time before we ever came out here. I also tried to do a little search to figure out if Mud Springs, if the folks on the trails ever drank from that water, and I don't think they did because the wild bison were making it muddy. Later on, when they had the Texas Longhorns coming up, and it was a different time period, you had people coming by rail, so they're not out there at the Mud Springs so much. So the cattle then did drink the water from there, but I couldn't find any evidence that any humans did. So later on, past this period, Mud Springs was a station for coaches, and the first buildings in Mud Springs were made of sod in 1859, so 6 years before this battle was when they first started putting some buildings up. And according to History Nebraska, the roofs were constructed of poles, brush, and earth with a layer of coarse gravel sprinkled over all to keep the wind from blowing the earth and brush away. These original structures served the stage line, and after 1860, the Pony Express, for which it served as a home station providing meals, lodging, and fresh horses. In 1861, the last Pony Express rider to leave Mud Springs took messages from the telegraph wire, which had then reached that site. According to the research paper, Archaeological Interpretation of the Frontier Battle at Mud Springs, Nebraska, by Professor Peter Bleed and Douglas Scott, the Mud Springs station consisted of 2 log buildings and a corral. One building measured 35 by 16 feet and served as a squad room and telegraph office. The other building was a stable that measured 40 by 20 feet. The buildings were not designed for defense. Rather, they were built as a working unit on the Overland Trail system. The structure sat on the west side of a dry wash that served as the path of the Jules Cutoff, a shortcut that provided Oregon Trail travelers a way around the steep hill at Ash Hollow. The station buildings were on a land surface some 10 feet above the wash and separated by a low bank. A wetland, possibly blocked to form a shallow pond, formed the northern margin of the station. A lightly built corral was located next to the stable, apparently to the west. Sir Richard Burton, an English sportsman who on August 12, 1860, passed through the Pony Express station on his westward travels, described it. The station house was not unlike an Egyptian fellah's hut. The material was sod, half peat with vegetable matter. It is taken up in large flakes after being furrowed with the plow and is cut to proper lengths with a short-handled spade. Cedar timber brought from the neighboring hills formed the roof. The only accommodation was an open shed with a sort of doorless dormitory by its side. We dined in the shed, dreading the dormitory of fleas. I cast about for a quieter retreat. Fortune favored me by pointing out the body of a dismantled wagon. So it's not the prettiest place to stay, and this guy happily went and stayed in a dismantled wagon rather than in the dormitory, because I guess there weren't fleas in the wagon. By 1865, the adobe structures appear to have been dismantled and rebuilt with logs, as described by A.G. Shaw, a battle participant with the 11th Ohio Volunteer Cavalry. There were several buildings and rooms connected or a part of the same building. The Indians got behind the hill in the rear of the buildings and would crawl to the top and shoot down into the log buildings. There were no windows on that side, but occasionally a bullet went through the chinking and penetrated to the inside, but nobody was hurt. So even before the battle started, you had incidents of Native Americans sitting on top of the hill and just plinking away. If they were better shots. Actually, that comes up later. The station complex is surrounded by a variety of topographic features. Immediately east of the buildings, there is a broad sandy draw. The level of the station is separated from the draw by a bank that is steep in some areas but less than 20 inches high. A series of hills is located to the south of the building site. The closest of these is less than 100 yards away and directly overlooks the buildings. The buildings have not survived, but their location is marked based on oral traditions. So that's a little bit of how it looked at the time. It's not really that big. It's just got a few buildings, and it really is easy pickings if you want to come and steal some stuff, which happens. So with that little bit of backstory, we're going to discuss the attack and the subsequent battle, which occurred on February 6th and 7th, 1865. At the time, there were 9 soldiers and 5 citizens stationed at Mud Springs. One of the citizens was connected with the telegraph company, and the other 4 were herding stock, which is kind of what the whole area was made for. People, brought their stock through, and they didn't really see a need for needing defense there from anyone. Yeah, there was the occasional Native American that took pot shots from up on top of the hill, but they didn't feel a need to have massive protection there. So the attack was between those at the station and the eventual Army reinforcements that arrived, and the Lakota Sioux, the Cheyenne, and the Arapaho tribes. The attack was part of a series of retaliations to the Sand Creek Massacre, which occurred just over 2 months prior on November 29, 1864. At the Sand Creek Massacre, the U.S. Army brutally killed and mutilated an estimated 150 people. 2/3 were women and children. It is still disputed between all sides, with estimates of 70 to more than 600 Native Americans murdered, often quoted. I've debated on whether we should cover anything with the Sand Creek Massacre because it happened far enough south in Colorado that it's not in our area, but because of that massacre, there were a series of attacks
it rippled out to
here. And it was horrific and bloody and purposeful. I don't know how anyone can read the facts of what happened to the Sand Creek Massacre and take the Army side. If you take their side, I don't want anything to do with you, is basically it. If you think the Army was in the right, then.
And there was, it's been a while now, but there was an excellent exhibit of the Sand Creek Massacre at the Colorado History Museum. Or the Colorado, it's not like the History Museum, but it's like the Colorado, I can't think of it, it's like State History Building. Okay. It's not like that's not like the Denver.
Not the Denver, yeah.
Denver, but it's in Denver. But
okay.
Check it out. It's really interesting. It's really good.
Yeah, I've never seen it. So it is something that will probably come up again and again and again as we do things in our area, but it is like the main cause for a lot of rippling effect up here to where we are. After the Sand Creek Massacre, the 3 tribes moved north toward the Powder River country in Wyoming as they were looking for an isolated place to settle. They're massacred at that point in time. That's pretty much the U.S. Army's plan, is to get rid of every Native American out here. And they're just like, y'all just massacred us for no reason whatsoever. And they just wanted to go away and live in peace. And so that's why they're traveling up through here. But because of the massacre, they spent most of January raiding towns along the South Platte River in Colorado and burned Julesburg on February 2nd. So granted, we're talking 1865, so it's not like you're burning Julesburg today. But yeah, they went through and they burned everything, took weapons, they leveled it. On February 3rd, they were in Lodgepole Creek where they burned the telegraph station. So getting ever closer to here. On the 4th, the Sioux sent an advance party to Mud Springs. They stole 18 horses and a large herd of cattle. So, they sent an advance party up to Mud Springs, and they're like, oh, cattle and horses. So they took them. The person that was there that could use the telegraph sent a telegraph out to Fort Mitchell, which is 55 miles west, and it's now, not even a 10-minute drive from Scottsbluff now. From Mud Springs, it's a little farther drive, but still, it's not too far away. But just remember, 55 miles west was Fort Mitchell, and you're talking horses and walking only. And they also sent a telegraph out to Fort Laramie, which was 105 miles west of Mud Springs. So those were the closest people they could call for help. Mm-hmm. Lieutenant Colonel Collins wrote in his report after everything had happened, I immediately ordered Lieutenant Ellsworth, commanding Company H, 11th Ohio Volunteer Cavalry, then at Camp Mitchell, a post 50 miles east of Fort Laramie and 55 miles west of Mud Springs, to proceed without delay, with all the men he could spare, to the relief of Mud Springs Station, to travel all night, and if possible, reach there by morning. So imagine this. You've already had your day at Fort Mitchell. You're like, la, 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 I'm going to eat dinner, chill out, go to sleep. So you've already been up all day. Now you got to get on a horse and book your butt over to Mud Springs. You're going to
Well, I would hope as an Army man you'd be okay with that.
I would think so too.
I would hope they're used to this.
Yeah. So he obeyed the order promptly and was at Mud Springs by daylight the morning of the 5th, with 36 men making the distance in 12 hours without stopping. So yeah, they essentially stayed up all night. Now, we know the battle started on the 6th. It was the 6th and 7th. Maybe some of them got a little bit of rest when they got there. Maybe they took naps in shifts, But Collins didn't write about that in his report. In the meantime, I left Fort Laramie about 7 p.m. on the 4th instant. So if you're not familiar with old-timey writing, he basically got his crap and left about 7 p.m. So he got the telegraph, we need help. He told the dude in Mitchell, you're closer, you're 50 miles closer than I am, go. Mm-hmm. And then he went and got his men and started going as well. He left with about 120 men as well, consisting of detachments of different companies of the 11th Ohio Volunteer Cavalry and part of Company D, 7th Iowa Cavalry Volunteers, being all that could be mounted and spared from Fort Laramie. My command traveled all night and reached Camp Mitchell during the forenoon of the 5th instant. I'm glad we don't use instant anymore, because it's just weird to my brain. 175 years later, it's weird English. I know it was normal then, but to my brain today, it's weird, and I'm kind of glad we don't do it, because it's awkward writing. Anyway, it was so cold overnight, however, that several men could not make the journey. Collins wrote, and his stuff is readily available to find online, and his report, he goes into a lot of detail about how cold it was, and that some dudes had frostbite so bad that they couldn't keep going. And you're also talking February in western Nebraska, eastern Wyoming. At that point, this past winter wasn't too bad, but it was still frickin' cold, and it was even worse then.
The winters that I hear about and read about in history books are nothing like to the winters now.
Yeah.
Even when I was a kid, they're nothing like they used to be.
Yeah, and even like, I'll give you a New York example, because that's where I grew up. The Hudson River used to freeze over even when I was a little kid. They would have the icebreakers go through so the ships could still continue to travel north. It doesn't ice over at all anymore.
Interesting.
If you do see ice and snow, it's because places like Poughkeepsie plow their snow down to the river and dump it in the river. And you'll see a little bit of ice, but it's not enough to skate on anymore.
Interesting. Yeah.
So, and that's over the course of, now I'm not 100 years old, but that's over the course of about 100 years. Because there's a island in the middle of the Hudson called Bannerman Island. It's a whole separate story, and not for us because it's not western Nebraska. But anyway, when the Hudson froze, like, you would get deer and other animals that would go over there and chill out in the winter and eat stuff, because during the year they can't get there because of the water, and so they've got nice food for the winter. And then eventually you can't get back because it might have been okay for you to cross, but then you couldn't cross back. And so there's a couple of unique smaller species on the island now because of that. And you don't really have big animals like deer on Bannerman Island anymore because they can't get there. But there are historical photos of big animals out there. And the same thing has happened out here. It's just we don't have islands out here. We just don't get the snow. Not even, I've been here almost 18 years, and we don't even get the snow we got when I moved here.
Yeah, we don't.
And I've read about, the blizzards and everything, and just in general, how much snow you get. So February, they're leaving February 5th. It's cold. I would not want to go. Even if I was a military person, this is what I trained for, I'm still not going to want to go.
No.
But they went. So after a short rest, I took 25 men and went rapidly forward, reaching Mud Springs about 2 o'clock in the morning on the 6th instant. The balance of the command followed under Captain Fonts, 7th Iowa Cavalry, and reached Mud Springs about 8 o'clock the same morning, having made 105 miles in 36 hours, including stoppages. That's impressive on a horse and walking. I think they were all on horses, but still, that's a good clip that they made. And when he stopped in Fort Mitchell at 2 in the morning, some of his, if you go read his full report, some men stayed behind because their frostbite was so bad. And then others were just like, nah, it's okay, just wrap my hands up a little better, I'll be all right, let's go.
Break it off, I'll be fine.
Yeah. The small party with me made the same distance in 17 hours, actual travel, and 30 hours, including the delay at Camp Mitchell. I found that the Indians had been in great numbers on Pole Creek on the 3rd instant, that on the 4th they began to appear about Mud Springs, attacking the station, stole the stock there, consisting of about 15 ponies and horses belonging to the citizens, 1 mule, and 3 horses belonging to the government. Also, the cattle herd of Messrs. Creighton and Joel, which was on Rankin's Creek about 4 miles distance, that on the morning of the 5th, soon after the arrival of Lieutenant Ellsworth, they had appeared around Mud Springs in large numbers, seemed surprised at the increase of men at the station, and after a little firing, their attack ceased, but many continued in sight on the hills all day. So, yeah, I understand why the Native Americans were surprised, because they had come the day before, stole all the horses and cattle. They're like, we can easily take them. Mm-hmm. They come back the next day, and the military had booked it out there, and so there's a ton more men there. So yeah, the Native Americans are going to be like, where the heck did these guys come from? Mm-hmm. And they probably figured, too, they knew there were people at Fort Mitchell. They just probably didn't think that the men could get there that quickly. Because I would think usual protocol, if you need some help and it's 7 o'clock at night, you'd be like, all right, we'll leave first thing in the morning. But whatever the telegraph had said, they were like, no, we need to leave now.
Well, so lucky someone was manning the telegraph.
Yeah.
Because there was a time where, everyone went to bed. Mm-hmm. And have someone manning it all.
And they got the call at 7 o'clock. So say this all happened at 6:30, and he sent a telegram at 7, and it comes in, a couple minutes later. They were probably getting ready to go to bed. Mm-hmm. And then they were like, do we wait all night, or do we send for help?
Yeah. That was one of the things they said, at least in maritime history, why the Titanic took so long to get help, was there were people that literally just went to sleep and didn't man the telegraph all night long. And so when they were sending SOSs so late at night, there were just a bunch of places that just were manned, didn't have the signal. So after the Titanic sank, it had become a requirement to have a telegrapher 24 hours a day. That became maritime law.
Yeah, that just makes good sense.
And I would actually be a little surprised if the military didn't already implement something that, it being the military, it didn't have a 24-hour kind of rule. It wouldn't really make sense that they didn't.
Yeah.
So, but they could have gone to sleep. I don't know. I don't know how that would have worked.
Yeah, I don't know enough military history to know that.
Yeah, it depends how much the military appreciated the technology and its capabilities to get information out that late if anyone needed help. So
yeah,
I don't know.
And Collins even noted that, was it Collins or the other study that I read, that the telegraph operator was a civilian. So was he, like today, he's a civilian that works for the military, and because it was such a small place, were they that worried? You know, maybe he was on call, so if they got to wake him up at 3 a.m., they'll wake him up and he can come over. But, yeah, I don't know. And I didn't find any information more on that. I'm sure if I was rich and had millions of viewers on my podcast, I could have invited a military historian about the telegraph to tell me how that worked and why that might have happened.
Just gotta find YouTubers.
Yeah, find those.
There's gotta be one out there.
Yeah, or find those influencers out there that will track it down for free. Because I don't have any money. I could give you a nickel for your time, but that's where we come up short because we don't have money. And just doing this takes time. Like you and I have talked about doing video for YouTube, and this takes a lot of time just to do this. And
it does. It takes an instrument. And I'm still trying to think of doing something like that. What I want to do is go back and try to go back and put some of it.
Oh, absolutely.
Just kind of doing our voiceover and doing like maybe a picture kind of thing.
Yeah,
like
all you need to do is
YouTube
grab the MP3s from me and just plunk it in and do the video. I mean, yes, it sounds easy. It's just like, just put your foot in the clutch, shift the first gear, and then when you put your foot in, take it off the gas and shift the second gear. But actually doing it takes time. I mean, granted, yes, I drive a 5-speed and I don't even think about it. But when I was learning, it took forever. And to do video takes a lot as well. It
takes a while, yeah.
And, right now, neither one of us are in a spot where we could take over that duty. And I don't know anybody that can do it well that would do it for free for us. So,
but if there's anyone out there.
Yeah. We'll take anybody
who's interested in history,
wants to do it for free, have at it, because we make no money.
Yeah, any of those video students out there, there's got to be some in high school or college, video students. What happened to you guys?
Yeah, and we don't even need anything fancy. Just like when we talk about, the distance between Mitchell, when we're talking about the distance between Camp Mitchell and Fort Laramie and Mud Springs. Plunk a map up there so people know the distance.
Have to dare to compare.
Because we also have not had the time to build the time machine so we could go back and film this. So. We got to rely on pictures only. So at daylight on the morning of the 6th instant, they began to come over the hills from all directions. And about the time of the arrival of the main body, they commenced a desultory firing and made efforts to cut off some of the party coming in. It was evident that they had come to take the post and expected to do so. The men in stock were fatigued by night travel, all chilled, and many frostbitten. The station is also utterly indefensible, being surrounded by hills and knolls full of gullies, enabling the Indians to ambush and creep up on us at points where they could not be reached by a cavalry charge. And that's why I went through the trouble of reading the geography. Because anybody listening to the description there of the geography, you're like, why'd you put it down there? It's like easy pickings. I don't know what they were thinking, why it was put there, why they didn't put I mean, maybe it was because that was the best travel route for stagecoaches.
Could be.
You know, I'm not sure.
Could be a cutoff from the wind.
Yeah.
Could have been a place where water gathered. I mean, who knows?
Yeah. I'm sure there was a reason at the time, but that's why I went through the geography of the area so you could get a picture of, oh my God, this place is going to be easily overrun.
Yeah, but is there a lot of good vantage points out here to put a fort or a place?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Shortly after our main body got in, they attacked us in force amid with great boldness. And I apologize for the stumbling over of the English that I'm reading out loud because, you know, force amid is not something we use today. So even though I've read this and gone through it and wrote it, it's still awkward language for me, and I stumble over words that don't seem to fit together sometimes. So the suddenness of the attack, the condition of the men, and the character of the ground interfered with proper discipline and system on our part, and the fighting at first was rather miscellaneous. We found it necessary to imitate the Indians, get under banks and creep up to favorable positions, watch for an Indian's head, shoot the moment it was shown, and pop down at the flash of his gun. The men got quite handy at this game and soon made any ground occupied by the Indians too hot for them. It was common to see a soldier and an Indian playing bo peep in this manner for half an hour at a time. I'm thinking more whack-a-mole. That's what I was thinking more of. At one time, there were some 200 Indians behind a hill and in its ravines where they could come within 75 yards of the buildings at the station. From this point, arrows came in showers. The Indians shooting them were keeping entirely out of sight. The arrows were apparently discharged at an angle of about 45 degrees, making a curve and descending upon us at about the same angle. Many horses and mules and some men were wounded in this manner. It became evident that this point must be cleared, and arrangements were made for two parties to charge, one on foot to drive them out, the other on horseback to head them off, when the Indians, finding half a dozen rifles leveled at each head that was shown, abandoned this position. We immediately took possession of it, dug a ride pit on the highest point, and had no more trouble from that quarter. After about 4 hours fighting, we began to press them back in all directions and soon drove them off. So during this battle, this part of the battle, it was estimated there were more than 1,000 Native Americans engaged in the fight. When Collins wrote his report, this little section they were focusing on had about 200. And the likely number is estimated between 500 and 1,000 Native Americans were attacking the fort. There were about 170 men at the station now, and, they just, like Collins had said, they just completed a 2-day march with little sleep and pretty much immediately went into fighting. And that included the ones that got frostbite along the way. So they didn't really have time to deal with any injuries. They're just on high alert, and they're staying on high alert till the battles is over. Collins also had a makeshift corral made from 4 wagons, but about these 200 Native Americans started pelting it with arrows. Sorry, I just kind of laugh because you make a makeshift corral with 4 wagons, and the Native Americans are like, great, you just trapped a bunch of horses and people in this little tiny, because wagons are big, but if you think putting 4 of those together in a square, you've got a bunch of live things in a small area. That's pretty much a standing still target.
Pretty much, yeah.
So the Native Americans were about 75 yards away. They did kill and wound horses and injured several men because of this. I'm not sure what the heck Collins was thinking by that. It would have been better to either let your horses go or tie them up on the side of the wagon or something, rather than penning them up in a tiny area and making them targets.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe they thought it'd be over quickly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
just keep them contained and
yeah,
we'll
and
get this over with, and that'll be that. I don't know.
yeah, and his report doesn't mention any of that. So, who knows what. Today, he would be grilled to death about why did you do that? What was the reasoning behind that? Were you negligent? Oh, okay, you thought this was going to happen. Okay, that's all right. So Collins sent those his two groups out to the Native Americans. They were able, the military was able to capture and hold the higher ground, which worked for his plan, but it took most of the day to happen. So these guys have been marching for 2 days. They've probably been awake for 3 now. Mm-hmm. At some point, even if you want to stay awake to keep fighting, you're getting tired and you want to sleep. So during the battle, the Native Americans also attempted to cut the telegraph wires to cut off communications with other forts for reinforcements. And I'm just going to read here from Collins's report again. I just found this amusing. They really, really, really tried. It was just more reinforcements were already on the way, so they kind of waited too long to cut down the lines. Anyway, early in the engagement, I telegraphed to Major Thomas L. Mackey, commanding at Fort Laramie, to send down a field piece, it appearing difficult to dislodge the Indians from their sheltered positions without one. Directly afterward, the line was cut. About 3 o'clock, I sent a strong party to repair it. The break was found about a mile west and mended. Soon afterward, it was cut again. At dark, another party was sent out and found 2 poles cut down by the wire gone for 4 poles at or near the same place. By taking wire from the line east, it was repaired, so that we were able to keep up communication with Fort Laramie. During the night, we fortified and prepared to take the offensive. In the morning, no Indians were in sight. So after the first cut and they repaired it, apparently the Native Americans cut enough of the wire that they couldn't connect it again, so they had to go east of the station and take wire to repair it because west was the closest. Because you're only 55 miles to Fort Mitchell, and if you go east, I believe Kearney is the next closest. So you're talking hours today, because Kearney's way more than 55 miles. So they did try, and I'm sure the Native Americans thought on the second try that's it. They're not going to be able to repair the lines, but they did. And on February 8th, Lieutenant William Brown arrived with a 12-pound howitzer, but it wasn't needed because the Native Americans were already in retreat. So what Collins did was enough to push them back that they left. And so even though he asked for the howitzer, it ended up not being needed. What he did was sufficient enough for them to go away. So at the end of the day, Collins reported 1 man dead and 8 wounded. He also estimated 30 dead Native Americans, though George Bent, a Cheyenne warrior, said none were killed. And I didn't really know quite how to list George Bent. Yes, he is a Cheyenne warrior, but he was also a Native American historian. He fought in several battles, but he was also, if I remember correctly, I believe his mom was Mexican. One of his parents was of Mexican descent. So anyway, he wrote a lot about what happened from the Native Americans' point of view in battles that he was involved in. So Collins reported, in this day's fight, we have 7 wounded, 3 of them seriously, and some horses and mules killed. The loss of the Indians must have been at least 30 in this engagement. Most of the officers and men estimate it to be much greater. It is impossible, however, to be certain, as their dead and wounded are immediately carried off. Indeed, it is common for the warrior to be fastened to his horse so that his body will be brought off in case of accident. And that's just something they did. But George Bent is literally saying, yeah, no, none of our dudes got killed. We'll never know. We weren't there. And how much of that, you had 1 man dead and 8 wounded, and how much of it is, oh, I'm sure I hit that guy. He had to have been dead. And then he gets tagged as a dead Native American. And because there's no bodies, there's no way to really tell. Collins also noted that there were white men or Mexicans among the Native Americans, and like I mentioned, Bent was of mixed descent. So was what Collins saw men like Bent who were Native American fighting for their tribe, or were they hired mercenaries? We don't know, because it's just his observation from the distance who they were. And there's really, I don't think there's really any way to tell unless you were actually there and you said, hey, dude, are you Cheyenne? Oh, no, you're from Mexico? Okay, one Mexican, there's no way to really know. But the neat thing about this battle is that we have accounts from both sides. So George Bent described the opening phase of the Mud Springs fight in a May 4th, 1906 letter to George Hyde. This letter has been cited by several others over the years, but the original text, transcribed by Stephen Hack, presents useful information. That night, scouts were sent ahead, reported ranch on Muddy Springs had soldiers. So early next morning, everybody got on their best horses and started for the springs. The village turned northeast from here. We went due north for the ranch. When we got near, we could hear lots of firing. Lot of Indians had started for this place that night so as to run the stock, but the soldiers had all their animals inside the corral. The soldiers were inside of buildings and had portholes to shoot through. We could not tell how many soldiers were in this party. Sand Creek ran close to the ranch with high bank. The Indians got behind this bank and shot into the buildings. At noon, they turned all their animals loose. The mules and horses ran in every direction. Indians were running after them. Among rules with Indians, who touched the animal with anything in his hand, the animal was his. I understood the soldiers were running out of ammunition. They turned their stock loose so the Indians would leave them, and they did so. After this, the big village camped out. He gives no number here. Miles east of Muddy Springs, where we had fight. No Indians were killed in this fight, and as I say, we could not tell how many whites were killed in this fight. Lots of shooting was done on both sides. All the guns we ever captured were Spencer carbines. They were the best guns at that time and were handy to carry on horses. So Bent's recollections present a number of useful insights according to Bleed and Scott's academic paper. First, he makes it clear that Indian fighters were well armed and that from the outset there was considerable shooting. He clearly states that the station defenders shot from loopholes made in the station wall. It is also significant that although Bent does not mention attacks from the hills south of the station, his account indicates that a bank of the sandy draw on the east side of the station let the attackers draw very close to the defenders' base, and that the attackers heavily used the bank. So Bleed and Scott's paper is really interesting. It's only 14 pages long, and I highly recommend it if you want to get into more detail about what happened in the archaeology of the site. But it's neat that they're giving the same story from their own perspective, and it's nice. Unlike in politics, it's nice in factual accounts here to have both sides to get a clearer picture of what actually happened, because everybody sees things differently. Even if you are giving your full and honest account, You know, even you and I, Connor, we're going to go see something and we're going to spot things differently. Even when you and I went to the powwow last summer, there were times I was leaning over and pointing out things to you, and times you were pointing things out to me, just because a lot was happening. And I'm focused on something over here, and you're like, oh, look over there, look at that. So
That's where all the number counting ever got to me. Like, you know how they have all these numbers that this many died, this many fled, this many this many that. It's like, how do you know?
Yeah.
Who's up there counting anyway?
Yeah.
Is there some poor fool with like who they didn't get a gun, they just got a pencil and a piece of paper. It's like, all right,
there
tally.
goes one. There goes one.
All right, tally boy. Yeah. Tally away, tally boy. Let's go.
Unless in something as small as this, you probably could count numbers and know right away, but like big, massive battles.
I'm terrible. Honestly, you could get 30 people, and if they were moving around enough, I don't know if I could count 30 people.
30 people, yeah.
I don't know.
Especially if they're all moving around.
Yeah, if they're all on horses.
Yeah.
Like screaming. And it's not like they all look incredibly different probably when they're all charging. They all have, the war paint maybe, or they all probably don't look incredibly different for you to tell. So
and in that, when you're in that moment, everything is heightened, and you just see a mass coming at you. You're not like, oh, that dude had red war paint under his eyes and that one had blue. You just see two dudes coming at you.
Yeah, well, in a lot of, like in British military and American military, you still had ranks and you formed them, and those are easy to count, and even the British and the Americans use similar rank systems. So like a 25-man was a 25-man in both countries, or whatever their contingent was. But the Native Americans didn't do that. They didn't like form a line and just come single file. It's like, okay, count us.
Yeah.
And it came out of everywhere.
Yes.
And anywhere. So I always found it interesting. It's like, how in the world did you count that accurately?
Yeah.
And,
and they didn't find any bodies, so you can't even say any.
They didn't find any bodies because supposedly they were strapped to the horses.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, well, isn't that convenient? Not that y'all missed, but it would have been funny if you guys didn't hit anybody.
Yeah.
You missed.
So reports from the time and archaeological evidence have found both sides were well armed. So it wasn't just these two reports that said, hey, everybody had lots of guns. The evidence shows it as well. Bullets from 21 different firearms have been found. The Army soldiers carried Spencer repeating carbines or rifles and other regulation weapons. Collins reported the Native Americans were armed with rifles, revolvers, and bows and arrows. The Native Americans also used... I just wrote that twice. Native Americans use bows and arrows. That's because I was writing and I rewrote the sentence.
They use bows and arrows, Irene.
I forgot to take that sentence out.
What the Native Americans typically use. Bows and arrows.
Yeah. So according I had originally just written the Native Americans used bows and arrows, and then when I was reading something else, Collins's report, I'm like, there's, because what I had read was it was reported they used them, and then when I was reading Collins's report, he was like, they used them. So I'm like, here's a first person account. Yes, they did use them, and I just forgot to take the second sentence out because I'm a dummy. According to Bleed and Scott, in total, 44 cartridges, cases, and bullets in the systematically recovered assemblage could be dated to the period of the battle. These were fired from the following weapons: 36 caliber Star revolver, 44 caliber Henry rifle, 44 caliber Ballard carbine, 54 caliber Lemon rifle, 56 caliber Spencer. I don't know why 56 is twice. Maybe it's like a 30-30 gun. I don't know. And Jocelyn carbines and 58 caliber rifle musket, which might be either a rebored M1841 rifle or a M1855, a M1861 or M1863, or an Enfield P53 rifle musket. So
one of those.
Yeah.
I mean, just send a musket and be done with it.
Yeah, some kind of musket from the time.
Kind of musket.
We're not able to determine which kind. Additionally, a single top hat or musket cap was found during the test excavation of the rifle pit. The cap is unfired as it bears no tool marks from being struck by a hammer. The kind of weapons used include at least... Oh, Jesus, I cut and pasted that in there twice. Anyway, so for those of you that know weapons, there you go. Those,
yes, I don't know weapons.
I don't either.
None of that meant a damn thing.
Yeah.
I didn't know what that was. I didn't.
Yeah.
I know what a difference between a revolver and a rifle is.
Yeah, looking at it, I'm like, that's a rifle, that's a revolver, and
Couldn't
that's...
tell you what, but
yeah.
it's a revolver.
And I can tell the difference between a revolver and a 9mm, but I can't tell you what kind. Like, I can't even tell you what kind of bullets go into that revolver, just that one looks different from that one. But there are people that are out there that, here you go, what is this? That's a 1860.
I have friends that are like that, yeah. I could tell you everything.
Yeah. So if you're interested in the report details of where the gun casings were found, and way more details about that, just check out that well-researched paper. And I know I'm going on and on about it, and I don't mean to, but when I was at UNL, Professor Bleed was my assigned student advisor when I started at UNL. I eventually switched to Professor Hitchcock because at the time Professor Bleed was, he was like the archaeology guy there, and I was focusing on cultural anthropology. So I switched advisors to Professor Hitchcock, who was a cultural anthropologist. And it was a lot easier to get things done and be like, okay, you need this class, that class, the other thing. And at the time, Professor Bleed was also doing a lot of work in Japan, but he was mainly archaeology, and the archaeological dig I went on at UNL, Professor Bleed led it. So I spent 8 weeks with Professor Bleed from like 7 in the morning till about 5 at night, Monday through Friday for 8 weeks. With Professor Bleed. So I know that, I don't know who the Scott person is that worked with him, but knowing Professor Bleed, all the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted. That could be. And it was a really good, fascinating read, even if I don't understand what kind of guns these were that were used. There were pictures in the report detailing where they had found things so that you could get a better visual picture. And I'm not going to go over 14 pages of that for the podcast. It's readily available online to go see it. So go see it, check it, read it out. It's kind of awesome. Anyway, the battle was deemed inconclusive with no decisive victor, but Native Americans did succeed in capturing the horses and cattle. So you have officially dead and wounded on the Army side, and y'all lost hundreds of cattle and a bunch of horses. I don't care what they say, that it's an indecisive battle. The Native Americans won. Okay, you pushed them back, but they already stole all your crap. So, I get it. I get why they say it was indecisive, but to me, that's a win for the Native Americans. The total number of Native Americans was estimated to be around 4,000 to 5,000 that were escaping from Sandy Creek. The Sand Creek Massacre, not Sandy Creek. I'm thinking of another place. And they were all encamped nearby. So the warriors and the rest of the group from Mud Springs crossed the North Platte River, and everybody was about 5 miles north of there. Collins left the garrison of men at Mud Springs and took 185 other men with him to track the Native Americans that had retreated. He found an abandoned camp at Rush Creek Springs, and I'm going to read from his report again. It was deserted, but there was evidence that it had been recently and hastily left, that they had been there about 3 days and were in great numbers. The camp covered several miles. if you've got 4 to 5,000 Native Americans, you're going to cover a few miles, at your camp. Over 100 beef cattle had been slaughtered in it. Empty oyster, meat, and fruit cans were plenty. Flour sacks, a quantity of codfish, and indications of the spoils of ranches and trains were scattered everywhere. Quantities of meat cut up for use and skins pegged down for drying and tanning were left upon the ground. So, in another account that I had read, they had stopped there and planned to stop and rest for somewhere between 3 and 5 days before they kept going. And we'll get to it in the next episode. But they basically were like, oh, crap. The army's still coming after us, so we have to leave. So they didn't have time to clean up their stuff, and they obviously had to leave some things behind, including skins that were pegged for drying that they were probably going to use for blankets or something. And, what do? You have to leave it behind. It's either sit there and wait another however long for my skin to finish tanning and die, or leave. So they left. So Collins pressed forward with 4 or 5 miles until they reached the Valley of the Platte near the mouth of Rush Creek. Within a mile of the river, they saw Native Americans scattered across the plains. They were grazing their horses. There were no teepees, lodges, or lodge poles. There were no women, children, or dogs. They had continued on and were at this point about 5 miles north of Collins. The men Collins saw were the warriors, and we'll get into what happened in the next episode, but basically just over the river were the dudes they were just fighting, and 5 miles north of there was where the big camp was, and they were moving on. So after the battle, Mud Springs continued for a time as a telegraph station and outpost until 1869, when the Union Pacific Railroad was completed. The springs and the station eventually became a watering hole for Texas longhorns as herds were brought north. In 1896, Mr. and Mrs. J.N. Shearer purchased the property surrounding the Mud Springs site. In 1939, Mrs. Shearer donated the station site to the Nebraska State Historical Society, and the site is now on the National Register of Historic Places, the nation's inventory of properties deemed worthy of preservation. So, even though this wasn't a decisive battle in any major war, it's important because it's one of the rare occasions where we have accounts from both sides of the battle. So Bleed and Scott noted that the battle also changed how some things were done. The fight did not mark the decisive point in any kind of frontier history, but the formal reports Collins prepared on the fight have been read and considered by military leaders. So they looked at what Collins did, what worked, what didn't work, and the military actually changed how they did things because of his report. So combat of this period also contributed to the formation of the post-Civil War military policies in the American West. So they also, after this time, they're not only saying we need to change the way we fight Native Americans, we also need to change our policies and the way we're doing things. And it was because of this battle. That's why it was important. No, it didn't change. It's not a battle of the Greasy Grass or Little Bighorn. Yeah. It's not a huge battle like that, but because of what Collins reported, because of oh my gosh, now George Bent, it gave more information of both sides, what was going on, and this side was doing this because of that, and this side was doing this other thing because of this other thing, and so it makes sense why things were happening the way it was. And then the military looked at that and was like, okay, we need to change stuff. So if you ever get out to 8 miles northwest of Dalton, there's a historical marker out there, and there's also a marker to the Pony Express there. And if you look at the photos that are available on the Historical Society's website, as well as I believe there's a aerial shot on Wikipedia's page, but Bleeding Scott's report have aerial photos as well listed where we found all the bullets and stuff. It's something worth going out and having a look at. And again, as always, yes, Mr. and Mrs. Shearer, donated they bought the property. Mrs. Shearer donated the station site to the Historical Society, but still be respectful when you're out there. Just, you don't need to destroy stuff. And I think most people that go to look at this kind of stuff don't.
They don't.
They're not disrespectful.
Yeah, not to spoil it for you kids. This isn't a place you're just like, let's go out and party.
No. So next time, we're going to catch up with both sides at the Battle of Rush Creek, which happens the next day. But for now, that's what we got on the Battle of Mud Springs, and we'll be at Rush Creek next time. So for now, I'm Irene.
And I'm Connor.
And this is Storytelling on the Plains.